I want to welcome everybody. This is an exciting day for us, and hopefully it's an exciting day for you. I think there isn't a lot of conferences geared toward landowners, and that's what we're trying to do here, is bring landowners together, and also the people that work with them, so we can spread the word, how to talk about things. There's operators here too, and that's good, because my talk today is talking about communication between landlord and tenant. And it isn't strictly landlord to tenant, it's tenant back to landlord, because we run into this every once in a while too, when we talk to tenants. They say, I don't really have a good way to communicate with the landowner, how to express what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, make them feel good about what I'm doing. But this is primarily geared toward the landlord communicating with the tenant. And that's really a big issue. That's why a lot of people come to us to help them, because they don't understand it, they don't know what's going on, they don't know what the yields are, there's some things that they want to do on the farm that isn't getting done, and so, but a lot of times it's, have you really communicated that? Have you let them know what you really want to do? Have you put it down in your lease? Most leases, whether it's the extension lease, our lease, the bar association lease, all of them have stewardship clauses in there. Well, what does that mean? And do you follow up on that? I know I do a lot of expert witness things too, and I know there's been some issues between landlords and tenants, in a lawsuit situation where they made the statement, well, it's in the lease, but it also comes back to that the landlord never enforced it or never followed up on it, so it really doesn't matter that they didn't say the tenant didn't do it after 10 years because it was never enforced over the first 9. So you've got to do that sort of thing. And I didn't think I was going to be in a room that had electronics, so I have a handout there, and the first one is just talking about communication between landlord and tenant. And what does that really mean? How do you want to communicate? Do you want to talk personally? Do you want to send emails? Do you want a combination of both? Do you want a letter? A lot of that has to do with how well do you know the tenant. Is it a family member? Is it a friend? You got no previous relationship. It's strictly business. Family is a little, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder to talk to. We know that. Friends, they're usually long-term friends. They're neighbors. They're somebody you rent to. It's probably easier if you don't have a relationship with somebody to get your word across and have it enforced. You don't have that family ties that will cause you to back off and not get what you want, or the operator may shouldn't use the word take advantage of you, but not feel they have to give you much because this relationship is pretty well set in stone. You're not going to change anyway. But we see that all the time. And one of the second things I listed there is how many, how well do you, under how well do you know the tenant, is how many acres do they farm. There's a lot of people out there that are operating a lot of land today. I visited with 3 people in the last 2 weeks talking about their operators, and one was 8,500 acres, one was 14,000, and the other was, they think, is around 20,000 acres. Well, I know the 8,500 acre operator, he admitted he had 30 some different landowners. And so you can see how difficult it would be for him to really communicate too well. And a lot of these guys, I don't make the claim that smaller operators are better than big operators or vice versa, because they all can take care of properties. But you can see that the bigger you are, the easier it is to do it. They want to do a lot of things the same way. They don't want to have a lot of changes. They don't want to have they want to do things that they can get in and out quickly because they have to if they got that many acres. So those are some of the questions you can ask. How many, and you shouldn't feel intimidated to ask, how many acres do you farm? How far is the farm from their home? Does that make a difference to you? If you want somebody within a few miles or a few, 5-10 miles, maybe it doesn't make any difference. But that's something, if you want to know, that's something you should ask. Do they have the equipment or the help to get things done efficiently? Now I know that's hard to make a decision when somebody says, well, I've got so many tractors, and you don't understand that, and maybe I don't either as far as how much help. But that's a question you can ask, is because you may want to know that your farm wasn't the last, especially if you're on a crop share or a flex lease or something where you're getting part of the yield. You don't want your farm to be the last one on the list. You want to know that you're treated as fairly as everybody else. Does your farm require higher management than most? Is it flat and black, an 80 or 160 that look like it doesn't need a lot of work, a lot of extra work, like extra time, but does it have smaller fields? Does it have pasture? Does it have fences? Does it have buildings? What do you want? I think you need to really take a look at your land and know what you need to do and how you want it done, and put that in writing. So you need to think what you really, first you need to know your property. It isn't the same as the next property. It isn't the one across the road. It's yours. You've heard some things that Jerry Hatfield said today about organic matter and different things. Maybe that comes into play. But again, you've got to communicate. When you communicate, what do you want to know? Are you interested in their family? I personally, I want to know, but that's not going to be part of what I do. When I help other people with their real estate, that's probably not going to enter into the picture of how I treat the tenant or how we work together. Do you want to know about the weather? Do you want to know about crop prices? Do you want to know about crop conditions? Do you want to know about drainage? If there's any drainage issues, any erosion issues, weeds, fences. A lot of operators now have crop scouts. Do you want to see copies of that information? There's a lot of data that's produced on property anymore through operators. Dan Freeberg's going to show us here at noon what the operators have available to them, and you want copies of that information. In our business, we do. We don't want to own it, but anything that's produced on that property, we want to have a copy of it for our long-term files and to analyze as we go forward. So you want it, and we want the tenant in our situation, I have a letter here attached to this, so we'll go over it quickly later, but we send a letter out to our operators in the summer asking for the data that was done in the spring, the fertility, but we also send a map along to have them make marks on the map if there's any issues. And it could be a lot of things. It could be drainage issues. It could be erosion. It could be, a hole in the field where a tile broke. It could be some trees that are overhanging that he thinks need to be worked on. It could be a lot of things. But we're asking them to fill out that map and put any notes on that map so we can address that in the fall versus just telling us about it or saying there's an issue somewhere. We want to get that stuff in writing if we can. And it's for their benefit too, because we don't want to be year after year complaining about some wet spot or something that didn't get addressed. We need to get it on the schedule to be fixed if it's something we can fix or something to address. Fertility's probably a really big one. We want to make sure that farm's fertilized correctly. We want to make sure it's maintained correctly. And so we require that. Greg talked about soil tests earlier. Most operators are doing that anyway, so you just well see what it is. You need it, especially when you get started in a new situation, you need to see where it's at. Because some of these guys are stuck with farms that haven't been maintained very well. And we see it all the time, and it isn't necessarily their fault that they're coming into some situation where somebody else has let this go, or maybe possibly you weren't paying attention and things got behind. So we need to think about what we're going to do with that as going forward. We have one situation this year where the owner is kicking in quite a bit of money actually to bring the P&K up to, or helping getting it built up where we're not completely putting it on the new tenant to fix this new farm that we've taken hold of. And we do know that the statistics will show you, and the crop scouting people and the agronomy people will tell you that we're not selling as much fertilizer as we used to. Due to the economy, people are cutting back, and that's okay if you've built it up over the years and you've got a bank built up, and maybe there's some times you got to take some time off. That's maybe not the worst thing, but you don't want your farms going backwards. You want to see them build up, you want to see them maintained, and that's probably one of the biggest things we deal with, is trying to get that information and verifying. We require fertilizer records every year, but of course everybody says, well, how do you know they put it on your farm, or how do you know they really did that? Or and I said, well, then that every 4-year soil test will help verify where that's going. And I've heard everything, or people say, well, that doesn't mean anything, or sometimes those are wrong. But we got to do the best we can do with the technology that we have, and that's the plan that we have, to do the best thing we can for the properties that we're involved with. And you know, in Iowa we have a lot of, it isn't just P and K and lime, and we also have a lot of manure being applied, and we've seen some really good situations there, and we've seen some that aren't being managed very well. We've got some farms that have some levels to the point where we're recommending maybe not using it anymore for a while, taking some time off. I know some of the operators manage it that way, that they can't put on manure every year, but we know fields that are getting manure every year, and you got to kind of watch that, because I've asked the universities, at what point do these farms get toxic, and nobody seems to know where that is, but they know there's a point. And you know, we're building new hog units all the time. Last time I heard, there were 1,700 applications for hog units in the state of Iowa. We're building 2 new hog producing plants, which is good. I think manure's good if managed correctly, but again, that's another thing that we need to know. If it's going on your property, we need to know that it's being done the right way. Do you want those records? Can you get them? They're sometimes kind of hard to get, but I know I'm kind of a bulldog that we're going to get them, or they're not going to apply it. So, and I actually this year had a little issue with a company that essentially is refusing to give us the information, and I said, well, then you're not going to do it, and they said, well, we got an easement, and I said, well, it says right, if you read the easement, it says we're responsible for overseeing the fertility on that farm, and so unless we know what you're doing, how you're doing it, then you need to be open with us, and then we're more than happy to work with you. But you know, it all goes back to what you want to do. You know, take a good look at your property. This isn't really rocket science. I mean, most people, it's common sense what you need to have done, what you think as well. If you see any erosion, Jerry Hatfield says we need to get it down to 0, and I agree with that. That's hard to do, but we sometimes have to make some tough decisions that we're going to farm some of these acres. We have a new farm we're managing that the tenant, sorry about that, that's a highly erodible farm, and I said something to the tenant when we first got started. I said, there's some areas here that need to have some waterways on. He says, yeah, I know, but the owner really doesn't want waterways. And I said, well, we'll have to figure that out. But I mean, because he wants more acres to farm. Well, that may be a discussion as we go forward here. This is the first year we're getting started on that, and maybe that'll be a conflict between myself and the owner. I don't think so. But that's the kind of discussions you need to have. You know, again, what does your lease require? You need to get all that stuff in the lease. Just these blanket boilerplate statements in your lease is good, but you need to be more specific as to what you want to do and how you want to hear it. How often do you want to hear? We have one owner in our system that he insists on 4 meetings a year, face-to-face with the tenant to understand the farm. And that's, I mean, I guarantee you that's the only landlord he has that requires that, but we're doing it. You know, in conclusion, it's your land. You have the right to have as much information and communication as you want so that it's sustained over time. There's a lot of extension information now, private businesses that'll state this information. A few years ago it was a little touchy whether we wanted to get all that stuff. I remember going to a Farm Journal meeting here in Des Moines one time, and a guy stood up and said, he was an operator, and he says, as long as I cash rent land, the owner's not getting anything. And I kind of cringed at that and moved on. But that's kind of the old thought process. But even on cash rented land, how do you establish the yield the next year if you don't know what the yields are? Or how do you establish the cash rent or some sort of flex lease or something? How do you know the health of that property if you don't know the yields? And that's something that's sometimes kind of hard to get. And it isn't just, here's a statement that it made 180 bushel. I mean, a lot of these fellows have yield monitors, guys and girls, they have crop insurance data, and they shouldn't be scared to give that to you. Most of our leases are flex leases that we want to have long-term situations, and our tenants understand that long-term working with us means we have to get information. So my thing is put it in writing, follow up on good efforts and lack of efforts. It's really fun to pat an operator on the back that does the right thing. I mean, it's really nice to write in our standpoint, to write an owner and say, God, this guy is tremendous. Versus saying, look, we're missing a few things and we're working on it. Again, tenants need to know the expectations. That's probably part of the problem is communicating to them what you really want, how you want to know it. And again, be appreciative of a good operator, because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of them out there, and we have a lot of really good young operators. I hear it every day. Can you help me find something? I just want to get started. When I see some of these operators that are 10, 20,000 acres, I think how many young operators we could probably get started with some of those acres. And I think we need to look toward that in the future. Everybody's going to be better off with more information, and it's out there, it's readily available. It's just a matter of how to funnel it to you. I included a letter here that could be tailored to your situation. I think a lot of people haven't gotten a lot of information over the years and haven't communicated very well. And this is an example of a letter you could probably use to get it started, get it in writing that's what you want to do. This is how you're going to do it. Again, you can't probably get everything in the beginning, everything at once, but you can start the process moving forward. And I think a lot of operators are interested in sharing what they're doing and how they're doing it. I think that a lot of them don't think these owners are interested either. There was, but again, going back to I think we really need an effort with some of the younger operators. They really just aren't getting a chance. I met with a guy the other day on a farm, an operator, and he said, I'm trying to get my son some more acres. He said, can you find me some more acres? And I said, well, right now, I mean, I haven't heard of any, but I'd sort of keep that in mind if we do. But he says, I thought I was going to have the farm next to me, and I knew the owner, I knew their family, and I thought we were going to get that. And I called him the other day, and he said I didn't get it. And I said, can I ask what happened? And he says, well, he talked to someone else, and an investor. He was an investor too. And he said, well, the best procedure is to find out who the 3 biggest operators are in your county, give them a call, and see what they'll give. And that's a growing. I shouldn't say growing, but that's how it works, folks. But that's why we need you folks to reach out and help yourself, but also help other people. There's a lot of people that are intimidated to come to these kind of meetings that are older women, older family members that have these issues. We hear it all the time, but are intimidated to come to an open meeting like this. We'd love to reach them. We'd love to help them. We can usually bridge that gap between the tenant and the landowner, and And because if you're not strong enough to do it, other people will. Greg? Oh, 5 minutes. Oh, I thought you were waving at me. Any questions on that? I mean, yes.
I know there's no great program, but from your perspective, are you seeing any give and take between the landowner and the tenant as far as cover crop payments and cost to do it, and or also then waterway work that has to be done? I know each situation is different.
Yeah, they're all different. Well, we've got 3 right now that I can think of right offhand. 2, the operators are refusing to do them. Just said they don't work, I'm not going to do it. So that's a decision to make.
So are you saying the landlord need to find another operator?
Well, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, if that's what you want, and you got a low organic soils, and you need to do some changes, then that, like I said, there's a lot of operators but there's also publicity out there saying that cover crops, there's a yield drag. There's an article I heard them on WHO talking about having to spray extra for controlling army worms and different things. So there's a lot of excuses not to do them, and a lot of bigger, they don't want a lot of change. They want to do things the same way on every piece of land. And if they got this 160 or something out here that's got cover crops, and they're trying to do something else. And that's where, to me, the beginning farmers, the younger farmers can fill that gap, because they'll bend over backwards. I'm not saying some of the bigger ones won't either, because I think there's some of those are really good operators. So you can't tell by looking at them as to who's good and who's bad and who's going to work for you. Anybody else?
Do you mediate in these situations, or how's it resolved?
Well, I don't know if we say we mediate. We certainly do if they're under our business. We don't necessarily do it as a consulting business. I mean, if we're going to do it, you probably need to do it long term. I do some expert witness stuff with lawsuits and different things, but that isn't really mediating these. I mean, we could look at that, but in general, we've got 2 systems. One is Farmland Stewardship Solutions, which is really what Greg does more than anything, and we basically manage the data. We are actually a backbone for the owner to help them do what they want to do. And then we also have the farm management, which is another step above, where we manage the money. We manage the complete relationship with the tenant. Where on the Farmland Stewardship Solutions, it's really between the landowner and the tenant. We're helping the owner manage the data, give them good information, manage, and it's less expensive. Some of those people end up going to management when they find out the relationship is difficult. Maybe that things change where they need somebody to help, put in tile, manage waterways. Because that's not what Farmland Stewardship Solution does. But Farmland Stewardship Solutions breaks the numbers down. We do a lot of flex leases. Anybody? Joe?
Thanks, Mark, for taking the time. Anecdotally, do you see a difference between the way people farm land they own and land they rent? It's kind of a generality.
I don't know that, but I asked, was that Stan? Is Stan in here? He's probably talking now. I asked that to Stan if there's any statistics on that, and I think it was Stan, but somebody, maybe it was Steve Johnson, I don't remember now, but they said statistically they don't see that there's a difference in that. I think there is, but I don't know. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking you this question because I work with landowners and I get asked this question. If you're working with a landowner who's very conservation minded, saw Jerry's talk, wants to start building soils, wants to do farmhouse, how do I find a farmer that's interested in doing these things? How do I find a farmer that works with me?
Yeah, you can just build. What we do is our old system was called US Farm Lease, which is an online leasing network. We don't really do it quite that way anymore, but we would advertise probably in the area, trying to find somebody and seeking resumes, and be very specific about what you want to do. Yeah, it's just like anybody else. It's just like hiring a business, hiring an employee or anything else. Our old system required a lot of information, And we had operators tell us that they weren't interested in doing what we were doing, because we don't want to provide all that stuff. And so, well, okay, I mean, that's, there'll be more for somebody else. Yes?
You mentioned that you have many flex leases. How do you structure your flex leases? I'm sure there's a wide variation.
Yeah.
What's your basic flex lease? How's it structured?
Our basic one is based on the gross income of the farm. So about 35% of the corn gross income and 42% of the soybeans. And so we'll have we'll set up the base wherever it's the owner or somebody's tolerable. It might be, we got them anywhere from 275 or from 175 to 275 is the base rent that they would pay in the spring, or maybe split. And then if the farm, the yield, we get the yields at the end of the year, and it's got to be verifiable yields. It isn't just hearsay. Times we take an average price for the year that the operator could market grain in their area, and we also use the 2 crop insurance numbers for that grain. And so we'll take that yield times that price, and if that is, take that times, say, 42% on the soybeans and 35% on the corn, and if it's more than the base rent, then there's a flex payment owed. And the operator shouldn't lose on that marketing-wise if they know the system and they follow the plan. Now, they can do a lot better than that, and I've had operators do that, say, well, look, I marketed a lot better than what you guys had in your system. I said, good for you, because but we don't want to wait till spring or next fall when they eventually sell the crop. I mean, we want to get settled up, December 1, and the owners. So, and that's our basic one, and then we've got variations from that. We got some that are higher than that. We got, again, some of the owners want a guaranteed base that they can depend on, and if they get a bonus, great. If they don't, a lot of times our base rents are the same as what they're getting, or maybe even a little bit more. But now we build in some sort of bonus system. Well, we also have crop insurance built in there too, so that'd be the gross income also. Probably wouldn't amount. It all depends on how it works, but I mean, that's just. A few years ago, crop insurance was very profitable. Now it's pretty marginal. Yeah, it can it can sort of hold the money together, but anyway, but crop insurance is part of the gross income. I didn't throw that in the formula I mentioned earlier. And we got some that have the crop insurance in the formula and some that don't. So anyway, if this letter does you any good, I could send you the Word document on that, and it could be tweaked for anybody. But I think you got to set it in motion. You got to, and then you got to verify it. Gary?
Is there any provision on this bailing corn stalks?
Well, if you heard, I don't know, were you there? I know you came in a little late. Did you hear Jerry Hadfield's talk? No. Anyway, he asked about baling corn stalks. We don't normally allow it in our system.
So that's what I was wondering, because I didn't really like that.
No, I'll guarantee is Jerry still here? I was going to ask him that question. I said, what do you think of that? I guarantee you the organic matter, as much as he pushes organic matter, that wouldn't be part of the plan. So, I hear some guys say, for instance, some of these farms that have some high fertility levels because of manure, they want to bale the corn stalks because that way they can pull some P and K off that farm, and keep those levels down. I've heard some say continuous corn, it's better for continuous corn yields.
They need mulch.
What's that?
I think they need mulch.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody, I think most people agree. But I see DuPont sent out, we got a letter on one farm about they're buying corn stalks again this year. So even though they let a whole bunch of them rot over the last 5 years, we're starting to plant again. So I don't know whether they got many bites. It's less money than they offered before, so I don't know how many people bought into the deal. But anyway, appreciate it. I think we're done with time, and we got 3 more. I'm not sure who's in this room, but anyway, thanks for coming. I'm glad to talk to you anytime. Thank you.